So, hello, Shapers. Our today's episode of Coffee with Curators, we have a guest curator from beautiful city, Port of Spain, from the Caribbean country, Trinidad and Tobago. Our today's guest is working as a medical doctor with passion for holistic health and well-being. She is an ambassador of One Young World. She also works as a co-lead of My Health Futures Youth Network partner. To know the young person's view on governing health futures 2030, she recently hosted workshops on health future and the design of digital first health system, which is appreciated by youth across the globe. It's my pleasure to welcome the curator of Port of Spain Hub, Dr. Jade Murray. Welcome, Jade, to the Coffee with Curators.
Oh, wow. What an introduction. Thank you, Gajnan. Thank you so much to you and the Pembry 21 Hub for having me this morning. I know it's nighttime for you, so I really appreciate you guys taking the time and to join such an esteemed panel of guests that you've had here. I was looking at some of the older episodes and I was like, oof, okay, I hope I can be as interesting as some of your past guests. But so really appreciate you having me here today. Thank you.
So I would like to start our today's episode with a question from your professional expertise. Can you share what are the emerging trends in healthcare and well-being and about Global Shapers AI Future Labs workshop that you have recently conducted?
Okay, thank you. I will do. I actually I put together a little PowerPoint just because I think it helps to be visual. So let me just go ahead and share that with you. Tell me if you're seeing my screen. I think you should. There you go. I'm just gonna do presenter mode. Should I be full screen now? Yeah, okay. I'm technically challenged when it comes to Zoom sometimes. Okay, so yeah, thumbs up, thank you. So what I thought to do is to talk about emerging healthcare trends is to pull out some what I thought were interesting headlines. And all of these are not older than 2021, actually. And we could spend like hours just talking about this alone, but I thought to pull out some that I think might be cool and interesting to like young persons. So these are just some headlines that I found online. So, you know, AI is probably like one of the biggest, you know, buzzwords that are going around these days. And, you know, there's this headline to the top left of your screen that says, you know, AI may be healthcare, rather, maybe the ultimate proving ground for artificial intelligence. And really and truly, it probably is. It's going to be amazing to see the applications of it as it relates to certainly disrupting and hopefully improving, you know, the quality of care that we deliver, you know, across the globe. I had to Google this one, but the Chat GP, that was launched in November 2021, and like that has been something that I personally like been seeing on my Twitter, and I had no idea what it was in health. Just things like summarizing patient records. So yeah, and you give it this big chunk of data, and it's able to pull out, you know, patient trends or the symptomology. It can help us, you know, maybe like lead towards maybe make a more certain diagnosis. It can help enhance clinical support systems, as well as automate some of the administrative tasks that a lot of doctors in certain settings don't like doing, for like for instance, like billing, pharmacy, those sort of write-ups that can be very tedious, that takes away from, you know, the doctor spending time with patients, as well as it can support patient education. Because if you have this chatbot that, you know, kind of just knows, okay, all of the well, of course, factual and sound information on common things like high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, then it saves a lot of time if someone can interact with this chatbot versus, you know, that time with a clinician. That one to your top right, flying pharmacy, why medical drones will take off in 2022. So the medical drone, well, the drone industry is really interesting to me too, because it's expected to like quadruple in the next couple of years. Medical drones, drones for use within medicine are particularly important to reaching and delivering medicines and therapeutics to rural communities. I saw two stories, one in Rwanda, where it was delivering blood products to rural communities there, and then also in India, where its medical drones assisted with delivery of the COVID-19 vaccines, for instance. So that's another really cool one. Very recently, I don't know if you saw this in the news, at the bottom left, Amazon closed a $3.9 billion buy of this company called One Medical in the US. It was floating around as well, and I was like, okay, so, Amazon, the global conglomerate, is like slowly inching in on, healthcare, and it just goes to show you like how trendy and where we're now at the sort of coming out of, the post-pandemic, how all of these technologies and emerging trends in healthcare, like the new way for a lot of these tech companies. That is, so One Medical, from my reading, is a company based out of Oregon in the United States. And they are basically into primary care, but they deliver both they have physical centers as well as they do telehealth and so on. And they span something like over 800,000 consumers in the US. And so like Amazon just like bought that to start, well, they also have something called Amazon Cares, Amazon Clinic, I think it's called. So Amazon is inching in on healthcare as well. So something to watch, I think, would be interesting to see. And a lot of things came up with that as well because of persons' concerns with just like how is that data going to be used, and just the idea that health data is so sensitive and special that we wonder that it'll be used justly by someone as notorious as Amazon, right? In the center there, 80% of consumers have turned to telemedicine. Rock Health, again, this is another organization out of the US, and they completed a 2022 their survey. I can't remember what it's called right now, but I think they had like over 8,000 participants, and within that survey, they found that 80% of them were pretty much accepting and or already using telemedicine for their, well, not acute, meaning like not emergency type concerns, so that they can see a physician or their healthcare provider, just like this, via video conferencing. India, I think it was launched in the end of 2021 by your health ministry, but they have really big plans to basically, it's like a 5-prong process to basically digitize, India's healthcare delivery with things like digital IDs for citizens, implementing of course, a big part of the discussion is the literal infrastructure to host, digital health solutions. So I think it's really, really cool that, a literal country is now, moving forward, because it is the future, and it is, how we are going to be delivering, healthcare. How we already started delivering healthcare, but certainly how it's going to be a lot more, commonplace. That one say bottom right, how AI can help diagnose rare diseases. Again, this one I think is pretty cool as an application, and I welcome it because, we're humans, and doctors, we have different, specialties, and, we turn to, infectious disease or rare disease specialists to kind of, can figure out a tricky case. And yes, that, clinical experience and expertise, I don't think will ever be surmounted. But, in a case like, in a really, really difficult case, once we have, the patient information in a digital format, we can build technologies that kind of like, look at that data and can pull out and say, okay, hey, it might be this disease, or it might be this category of diseases that you might not. At least it helps sort of point us in the right direction. And things like, changing earlier, because rare diseases tend to be on average diagnosed 6 years later, and as well as it requires up to like 3 to 4 upwards of like different doctor visits. So you can imagine, cutting a lot of that out and sort of being able to say, hey, this is what you have early on, especially, as it relates to childhood, diseases can be really cool. So that's another thing, another application of AI. Let me move on. Some more headlines. I won't go through all, but it's on your screen for you to see. One of the ones that I thought was pretty cool in your top right that I'm particularly interested in. So there's this, just to preface, I'm not in any way endorsing any particular company, organization, right? It's just, I should start with that disclaimer at the start, right? But it's basically what I just thought was interesting based on just like an internet search. Okay, so please, as it's not me endorsing, I'm not getting paid by any of these companies. I wish I was, but I'm not. But top right, so that is something called the Drug and Ambient Experience, which is a company called Nuance, and they're I think from what I understand, collaborating with Microsoft to launch this. It's just AI based, but basically, like a physician, you can have a patient encounter, and the preferred device, so like a mobile device, sort of like sits in the middle of you and the patient, and it's an unencumbered interview. So me as the doctor, hi, what brings you in today? The patient says, well, doc, I've been experiencing weight loss for 3 weeks. I have a cough. I get fevers every other night. I'm just saying, and I literally don't have to like document anything. Like this technology records the conversation and then it generates the clinical encounter, which I think is really cool. So it's able to pull out, those sort of keywords. And of course, like there's a physician, you will of course check it off as a physician and, I guess edit or add anything else that you need before you finally sign off. But the idea of like sitting and not having to like write anything is amazing to me. So I think that's a really, really cool one that I hope to, utilize one day soon. Other cool things on the screen, wearable tech in healthcare, that's another big one, the wearable devices, and they're gonna start getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Something as simple as your fitness tracker is a medical device and these things like they're making them to do all sorts of cool things now, track your heart rate. Some of them can do ECGs, track your oxygen levels in your blood and so on, your levels of activity for the day. And all of those things are really, really important, clinical data. And, who knows in the future what other sorts of, another one is like the blood sugar sensors as well. So it's nice to know now that, there are non-invasive ways of checking like, your blood sugars, because the major burdens of disease in the coming future are going to be non-communicable diseases. So your high blood pressure, your diabetes, your inflammatory diseases. So monitoring those sort of things will become even more important in the future. What else on here? Is there any headline that you think jumps out to anybody that maybe I could spend 2 more minutes talking about? I thought the mRNA technology is pretty interesting as well. In your bottom right, talking about how the science behind the mRNA vaccines can be used in cancer treatment. Cancer treatment is very, very tricky, and that it goes into the realm of a sort of precision personalized medicine, because the thing is, people sometimes like the drugs that we have now to treat cancer are sort of like aiming a cannon at like this one point, and like so we have very, very big and strong drugs that sort of like treat everything, including the cancer. So like it treats the cancer, but it can be very, very detrimental as you're aware to your other tissues and other body functioning. But where we want to get is that sort of like targeted, like just the cancer cells are affected by the treatment, and the mRNA vaccines holds a lot of promise with that. In Norway, that headline they were referencing a study in Norway where they have started using it to treat melanoma cases. So that's pretty cool to see where that sort of goes in the future. The top left and top right, so the Mayo Clinic out of the US and then the NHS in the UK, making some major investments in augmented reality. So that's another cool one because there are a lot of applications for AR in health. So things like, virtual clinics. They can do like augmented reality training for like surgeons, for instance, so they get to like practice surgery before they actually operate on a patient. Mental health is another big one, and I know a major concern for young persons. So things like augmented reality, like mental health clinics, can be an interesting thing where you can access that sort of support network and treatment, like from the comfort of your home. The NHS is investing a lot of money into AI, so it's a really, really cool time, I think, for healthcare, and that we're at this end of a lot of the more futuristic stuff that we see in sci-fi movies and so. But this is sort of where it starts. Startup insights, yeah. So Startup insights. So also just discovered them as well. They are a company, I think, Austrian, that basically looks at startups and like emerging companies and can like take that. So they also use AI, which is fun, and then take out trends from those sort of emerging companies. So they say these are the top 10 healthcare trends and innovations in 2023. So right at the top there is AI, things we talk about, telemedicine, big data and analytics is another pretty big one, because I personally think that, because once we start getting and I sort of blacked out the companies that they had on the right side. Again, I'm not trying to promote anybody's particular tech company, but one of the interesting things with big data and analytics in health, I think, and that's really cool, is once we can, synthesize health data in a way that, makes sense in terms of pulling out trends or pulling out or modeling or predicting and those sort of things, like that is going to be really, really powerful, especially as it relates to, I think one of the next big things would be getting more health data from more diverse populations, certainly, like, for instance, for us in the Caribbean, because like clinical trials are largely, Caucasian males, and you find sometimes some of the therapeutics that they develop don't work for persons of color or persons from different ethnic backgrounds. Where I'm from in Trinidad and Tobago, very, very diverse, as you mentioned, as you start, has a high East Indian population as well as Afro-Caribbean population. And so literally our health data just isn't reflective in a lot of these trials that they use to develop these new therapeutics. So whoever taps into that sort of like gold mine, I would say, of data. Of course, we can have a whole other conversation in terms of like the ethics and the governance of these things, but the idea being that in an ideal situation where it's used, correctly, justly, persons are aware of how their data is being used and so on. I think it really has the potential to again revolutionize medicine, and I think where we're heading as well, or where we should be heading, is a lot more personalized medicine. It's like, this is a treatment for you based on your, data. And that can be something really cool to see in the future. At the start, Gasnani asked me to share about the work we did with the AI Future Lab and the Lancet and Financial Times Commission on governing health futures 2030. So that's something that's been pretty interesting and actually came up through the Global Shaper Network. So the AI Future Lab is an initiative of the Global Shaper Network. So it comprises shapers that are sort of leading the way in AI development, policy, governance, and they had a partnership as a youth network partner with the Lancet and Financial Times Commission governing health futures 2030. And basically what that commission came together to do was that they recognized that, hey, digital health and the digital transformation of health is happening. And we should be, now that we know that it's happening, putting things in place that it's design, governance policies in a way that is based on things like, human-centered values, equity, just use of data, making sure that we have literal, young persons who will be utilizing these technologies, their voices and their concerns be heard in the process. And they launched a campaign called My Health Futures in August of last year to spread some of the just to back up a bit. So they also put out a cool report where they proposed, and I quite rightfully agree, that digital health is one of the new. It summarized a couple of things, but one of the most powerful ones to me was that digital health as one of the new social determinants of health, and that's powerful to me because the social determinants of health are basically all of the factors that determine, health outcomes, whether good or bad. So things like your educational background, your geography, your age, your income, the sort of things that we know have very serious effects in terms of even if you could even access healthcare in the first place, right? So you can imagine as healthcare becomes more and more digital, it can even widen some of these socioeconomic gaps because, you can say telemedicine, but the person needs to have a device to even access, telemedicine. So what we did was through the commission, is we hosted 2 workshops where we got together some, very excited and thoughtful and very engaged young persons to give their feedback as well as their ideas for what digital first health systems should look like in the future. Very, very big themes that I think we can all agree with, came out of those workshops. So things like, ethical considerations, the idea that their data is, private for good use. We spoke about, they did this activity called Flip the Future, where they got to think about really, really cool things about what healthcare can look like in the year 2045. One of the coolest ones I thought was like self-sewing skin grafts. So someone mentioned that was cool. Maybe way into the future, but I think that'd be cool would be like, those sort of self-healing pods that we see in sci-fi movies would be cool. So we still are wrapping up some of the information from those work, or synthesizing it rather. And what that is going to go towards is a final policy document that the commission is going to publish to basically say, hey, these are, young people's ideas, concerns, and best practices, and this is how we should be, moving forward in terms of how we create these digital health systems in our countries. To the right, I got to write an article that was also published on their website, where I spoke about a topic that's pretty dear to me. The Caribbean as a region, and I should say the English-speaking Caribbean, really, really lags behind some of the standards, especially standards around digital health in more developed countries. And as simple as electronic health records isn't, widespread. So in this article, one of the things that I would have spoken about was that I think it should be started by, electronic health records. And we're in a good position, regions like, the Caribbean, I would say even India, that are like now in those sort of early stages of developing their digital health technologies, because we now know like what are the best practices and the best things from the last 20 years. It means that if we're starting now, we really have the opportunity to be a lot more innovative, to use, again, the what worked, because we would have seen everybody else sort of like trial phase. So it's a really cool, I think, place to be okay. So I was like Googling imposter syndrome because that's one of the questions that we spoke about was like one of your most memorable moments in the global shapers community. And this is gonna sound, it's gonna be funny, but we both attended the annual Curators meeting in Geneva last year. And on I think that was the last day, the Sunday, the third day, when we were having lunch, do you remember? On, the top of West headquarters, and it's like overlooking Lake Geneva, and it's so pretty and scenic. And I fully had a mental breakdown. I fully had a mental breakdown because, and one of my other hub members, she was there with me, Brooke. She came because she had won the Climate Reality Grant for us for our main project last year, and Brooke was there with me. And I was like, I had to find her back, and I'm like, Brooke, I don't know what's happening because I just feel so overwhelmed right now. And one of the feelings that came up to me a lot in that moment was that I don't know how it felt for you, but I felt like I was surrounded by, really accomplished and stellar, young people that were doing these amazing things in the city. And like, I just don't know why I just didn't feel like I started to question, like, am I as, accomplished as these people, or am I, and it was really intense in that moment. And like my imposter syndrome like went hard. Like I'm like overlooking Lake Geneva, and I'm like fully in tears. Like it was a lot for me. And I don't know how. I apparently it's pretty recovered, but like I shouldn't say struggle because I'm really getting better at it, and really that experience I had, with the summit, and there were a couple other things that where I had to just sort of get my mental space, deal with certain things and start to like really rethink how I look at certain things. So it really, that experience helped a lot dealing with imposter syndrome. But it's something I wanted to talk about because I feel like a lot of young persons, especially, being in a community like Global Shapers, where, like the name in of itself is it is pretty cool, right? Because, where these young persons that are supposedly shaping the world. And so your network, within your cities, as well as, the wider Global Shaper network is really supposed to be, we are, a group of really, really impressive young people that, within our various fields are the thought leaders, the change makers, the people on the ground sort of thing. And so it can get really, really overwhelming because you can feel like, oh, am I, good enough to be here? Do I deserve my place here? Sometimes I don't know if anyone else on this call deals with that, but sometimes I do. And not just with Global Shapers, but just like a lot of things, even like within medicine, medicine can be a really tough field to deal with in terms of like your mental space. So I just wanted to talk about for anyone that it resonates with about, dealing with imposter syndrome. And one of the things that I'm learning is just in general, just acknowledge your feelings, just like, this is how I feel about this, and like that's okay, because oftentimes we tend to be like, oh well, I shouldn't feel this way, or this isn't logical, or this isn't justified in the situation. It's kind of like, okay, take a breath. This is just how I feel, and like don't like you shouldn't fight yourself on what your genuine feelings are. So that's, I think it's like step one. Step two, I think that helps me a lot is sort of like you have to start questioning your thoughts, because not every thought you think is the truth, and not every thought you think is what's going to happen. A lot of times we create a lot of these like sort of worst case scenarios in our own heads. And it's really, really important to challenge those thoughts and with actual facts, right? So on a good activity that I started doing was like actually start like writing down some of your achievements, right? Like it's easy, I think, sometimes to sort of overlook, especially these small things that we have accomplished, so far in life. And an accomplishment is whatever it means to you, of course. Like, what success looks like to you and what accomplishment looks like to you, that's your own definition, I feel like. But start challenging these things with like, but hey, I have this actual track record that this is what I've been able, and maybe it's something as simple as like I got up and I went to work today. Going out, getting up and going to work is hard. Like like it's hard for me, right? And one of the things that helped me as well is just starting to really, because I'm like, imposter syndrome, like it's not diagnosable, and it probably will be in the future. But it's actually a term in psychology, like first coined in like the 1970s, and it's linked a lot with persons that have like perfectionism traits, which is story of my life. And the thing is, with persons that deal with perfectionism, you have to start letting go of perfectionism, literally, just understand that, you're human, you make mistakes, and also that sometimes you just have to like start, and you may have a raw version or a raw you know start of whatever it is, but you build on that, and like it's just letting go of this idea that it has to be perfect at the start, and really just having a lot of self-compassion is important, I think. We can again be like our own biggest critic. So one of the things that has really, I remember learning a long time ago, that really I try to remember, is try to talk to yourself in the way that if like a loved one came to you with the same problem, you would talk to them. Because oftentimes, like, we talk to ourselves so negatively, and if you think about it, if someone you love came to you that same thing, you never tell them some of the things that you tell yourself. Like you be a lot more gentle. You say things like, "It'll be okay. We'll figure this out. We'll," and like we say the harshest things to ourselves. So I think sometimes that self-talk is so important, and cultivating self-care. And I think also really importantly, in dealing with imposter syndrome is your support network, things that you do to support yourself, self-care, things that I like, journaling, meditating. I sleep a lot, which is not a good thing sometimes, but it's just ways in which that you can help yourself like sort of relax and get out of that sort of very self-critical place. So that's that on that. So I wanted to talk about that for a bit. My next slide here, the big man himself, Mr. Klaus Schwab, who is the WEF founder and chairman. As we know, the Global Shapers is an initiative of the World Economic Forum, so that's how we all know this guy. And to talk about, my experience with the community as well as Global Shapers participating so far. I remember one of the things he said during the summit that really stood out to me was leaders create other leaders. And so much more sense to me now, because what I've understood by like my own leadership style in dealing with the Global Shapers Port Spain is that really and truly, I think to be effective in an organization, other persons really have to feel empowered to step up and make decisions, and they need to be in a space where they feel safe, valued, and seen. So for instance, for me, like one of the things that when I started with the Global Shapers is that I initiated a restructuring of our hub. And this was, we restructured our hub into impact cohorts and subcommittees. And this was based off of something that was started or was introduced to me by the Munich Shapers, so shout out to the Munich hub. But basically we chose from the 6 impact areas, we chose the 3 that we wanted to focus on for the year, as well as we did like a skills and interest polling amongst the Shapers, and created some subcommittees. So we did like social media, management, PR, communications, team well-building, as well as we just did some other like individual roles that we needed. So like we did like a top link liaison and like an HR recruitment lead person. And basically the idea was to spread responsibility and accountability more evenly through the hub, because I think what happens a lot of the times is a lot of the pressure and sort of expectations fall on curatorship. And if you recall from our curatorship mandate, like the literal mandate of the curatorship is to stay, and it's to oversee, and it's to uphold, global shapers, values, and spirit. And it's to make sure that we're executing, our projects and so on. It's not necessarily that, oh, the curator needs to lead every project, or the curator needs to bring every opportunity to the hub. You know what I mean? Like, we are a group of young persons that are supposed to be sharing, this shared goal that, we want to, we see the problems, we want to create solutions to the problems, and we want to be the ones that are driving the changes in our communities. So it really is a team effort. And I think that's one of the things that we try to accomplish in our hub, just making sure that persons had some more responsibilities in that way, and that they also felt, empowered to lead certain things. So for instance, like in the impact areas, we assigned team leads and like individuals, like based on your interests and stuff, we would have assigned you to certain groups. And those persons would have then sort of like in liaison with curatorship, like keep us abreast of so if actually we created like a sort of decentralized leadership model in our hub. And again, one of the things I try to do a lot is like, you highlight, shapers and like what they're doing in the group, make sure people feel like their contributions are being seen and celebrated in the group. And I think it's really worked for us so far. And I think it's this is like my first, like I've always been inclined to leadership roles. Let me show you the next one. So this is just some photos at the city of Port of Spain. Top bottom left, that's our national flag, and the top is like some pictures of shapers. These are different cohorts actually. So it's like it's worked well for me, I think. In leading the group, our membership is 26 currently. Of course, like we can spend so much time talking about so many other things because of course like it isn't perfect, and dealing with groups, like there's so many things that you deal with in group dynamics, but for the most part it's like you want people, I think people work well or deliver well when they feel like they are creating or feeling like they're definitely helping you move the needle towards your shared goals. So that has really been, profound for me in terms of like how I've been allowed to like be a leader in this setting.
So let's move towards your hub specifically. So can you share the impact of GSC on your personality development and improvement of your leadership abilities?
It's my first time, I would say, like leadership of this scale, because our hubs are at minimum 20 people, and mine, for instance, is 26. So it's like it's just added pressure of like knowing that you have to like organize meetings and make sure, and it's like thinking about so many different things at the same time. It's your organizational skills, it's your commitment. Have to like sort of like step up and be committed and be passionate. And it's like, how do you motivate people? How do you convince them to go down this road with you? And I would say I don't even know if I have the words to describe it, but it's definitely made me a better leader. And I think I would have gotten to, I guess, maybe share or develop some of the better parts of like my own personality and approach to just life, because I do consider myself a pretty reasonable person. And I think, my hub members think that as well. And I'm very open to listening to other points of views, as well as like guiding conversations. I think I'm a good like moderator and so on. So I think it's really like brought out the best in me. And what me thinks has helped for me a lot is like I'm less scared to take on leadership because of it.
So if I ask you, what was the most memorable moment you have had while working with the community, what will be your answer?
I would say one of our projects. So one of the projects that I wanted to share with you today was that we recently completed was our Food for You project. where we trained 30 farmers around regenerative agriculture practices in Trinidad and Tobago. And I think it was like session 2 or 3, where the participants were, sitting around, and we were really, really lucky to have such a diverse group of, farmers, educational, ethnicity, ages, genders, and so on in the group. And this guy, he would have shared, and this could have been like, it was like halfway through the program that, it had already transformed how he approaches farming. He went home one day and he just like threw away all of his chemical pesticides. And I was like, and it was an amazing feat, and I wish we could have recorded it, because like how he shared, it was so profound that the course had such an impact on him. And like, if you think about it, like the farmers are the people that like literally make our food, right? So the idea that, someone through, the Global Shapers project and intervention is now going on to practice, more sustainable farming and reduce things like pesticides and chemicals and all the things that we know, through that can make us sick. That was a really special moment, I think, for me, and the potential and the potency of the network and what we can do in our communities.
So we are at the last question of today's session. So at last, would you like to give some advice or suggestions to the new shapers across the world from your experience?
I think that the hubs and, through how we recruit members, the shapers really reflect the best of our cities, right? And everything that we need is already within our local as well as global network. So like, don't think anything is too big or too small, and even just the smallest things, like even impacting one, like that's one thing I had to get through my brain as well. Like even if like you help make life better for even one person, like that's impactful. And as well as for new shapers, I would say like, remember that yes, curatorship, but you also make you have a big responsibility and role to play in your experience of global shapers. And it's so important that you are also, even if you're not necessarily the curator or some other leadership role within your hub, bring opportunities to the hub, start things, follow up on things, it really is as a collective group, it's our overall responsibility to, drive change and do what we need to do as the global shaper community. Yeah.
So thanks for being an amazing guest and for sharing your valuable knowledge and experience with shapers today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Adnan, and the Proficiency Hub. I appreciate you. I know it's late for you guys, so thank you so much for having me. Yeah.